Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me this week on Newsmakers. Today we're focusing on the city of Joplin, and there's been discussion this past year about the city budget and taxes, so we brought in the mayor and the city finance director, Gary Shaw and Leslie Haase, for talk a little bit about this today for the viewers. So thank you very much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
And I think we'll start off with, I guess, Leslie, I'll throw it at you first. People, the city budget. You know, we hear a lot about the budget, and people might be wondering, where does the money come from? When we talk about taxes, that's the major impact.
Yes, so the city of Joplin is almost entirely funded by sales tax. And, you know, we have the 1% general sales tax and the 0.5% transportation sales tax. But about 20 years ago, the voters actually approved a special tax with a sunset. The park stormwater sales tax was first passed in 2002 and renewed in 2012. And then they also passed the 3/8 cent capital improvement sales tax. And then finally, the 0.5 cent public safety sales tax. And those taxes were put into place for specific purposes for us to be able to do specific projects. You know, the 1% sales tax and the 0.5% transportation sales tax basically funds specific services like police and fire, street maintenance. It didn't give us a lot of resources to do new projects that were badly needed.
Okay, so Mayor, as a member of the council really had to look at the challenges and gave the people a chance to vote on these options and continue to that.
Yes, and you know, it's a challenge sometimes. We that deal with it on a regular basis can see some of those things, and the citizens actually see them, but it really doesn't jump out at them until someone shows them that there is a problem. And you know, nobody likes taxes. Nobody wants to pay additional taxes, but I think it's exciting when we look back what we've accomplished in the last 20 years with the tax that we have, that the people gave us to be able to make some improvements that we needed to make.
And I remember some of those campaigns or elections that were having about the taxes. They were stressing their sales taxes, so a lot of outsiders who come to Joplin but don't live here are helping to pay those.
That's correct. Obviously, we're a town of about 50,000, but our daytime population is 250,000 roughly, and that puts a strain on providing services in the community, and so that is one reason that the city is driven by sales tax.
And of course, there's taxes. People, if you order something online, you get a choice. Well, there's a different tax if I live in Newton County and Jasper County, so sometimes people get confused. I mean, it varies specifically along those lines.
Yes, the city sales tax is set whether you're in Jasper County or Newton County at 2.625%. And the state rate, the state sales tax is the same, but the counties do have different rates.
So depending which county you live in.
Yes.
And then there's certain parts of town where you have some special zones where there's taxing.
Yes, we have some community improvement district taxes and some transportation development district taxes.
Okay. And then other funds, you know, that come in. I know I've read that you have, for instance, cigarette tax. That's something a lot of communities have. And then hotel, motel. The people who visit our community are paying taxes.
Yes, we have hotel, motel, cigarette tax. We actually have gas tax. We receive some gas tax from the state, and we do have a little bit of property tax.
Okay. Well, today we're specifically talking about sales taxes and what's involved there. So as I mentioned, approved by voters a few years ago, starting the process. I guess, Mayor, take us through that process. You have community members involved from the start when you bring up these issues.
Oh, certainly. Anytime you have anything that could affect the citizens, the council gives it a great deal of consideration, and then we normally, along with the staff, select a group of citizens that will help us to look at what our needs are, give priorities to those needs, and then they actually work with us to help us to coordinate to the people and present that need to the people so that they too can see what we're going to do with the money if they entrust it to us. And so it very much involves the community as a whole.
So this is where we hear about the citizen task forces that come in, look at those needs. I imagine a lot of times you got a long list of needs.
Yes.
So the challenge is of how do you narrow those down, what you can handle.
Yes. So the mayor's correct. We have a needs list that far outweighs the amount of resources that we have, and the Citizens Committee will look at that and prioritize those, and in the end we will come up with a list of projects that we're going to complete with the tax that the voters are actually voting on.
So each of these areas we'll be talking about, whether it's stormwater or parks, capital improvements, there are specific projects tied to it.
Yes, specific projects in all of these taxes, and they have a sunset so that the voters can help ensure that we're doing what we promise and we're doing the projects as promised.
So kind of reviewing them through the voting process. And then you also have oversight committees, right, that work with these?
Yes, we have a tax oversight committee that gives us a quarterly report on are we using the money in the areas that we said we would use it in. And you know, we appreciate their efforts because they help keep us on our toes. And you know, there's occasion when you set up a project and you start a project and you set a list of priorities, so once in a while there'll come a need to make a change in those, and occasionally we have to do that. But we really strive hard to follow that list of priorities because the citizens told us that's what they want, and our staff looking at what's going to help us to move in the right direction, keep moving correctly, analyze that, and the combination helps us to set a goal, and then we try to follow that.
So we're coming up at about, say, 20 years of having these special types of taxes. Would you say that without these funds, the city would look different today than if we had not used them?
Absolutely. The city would look very different. When we begin to talk about some of these projects, you know, I always encourage people to think about what the community looked like before we did these projects, and it helps you. It helps me when I visualize, helps me understand how much we've accomplished over the last 20 years.
A few nights ago, Leslie brought this information to the council, and you know, I've been involved in it, and I'm in my 18th year, so I was there for most of this tax time, and it's as we watched and looked and listened to what she was telling us, and we looked back over I was amazed at all we'd been able to accomplish. And so I asked her, I said, if we could, we ought to be able to try to sometime show that to the citizens, because it is we have made some major steps.
Right.
Very proud of that.
And of course, you're covering all areas of the city as well.
Oh,
yes.
It's a wide expanse. So someone may not get out of their neighborhood that often, but there's things being done in other areas that they might not realize.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Tying that together. Let's talk about some of these and kind of break them down by points, and we have some photos that can go with them. But stormwater is something, perhaps people don't really think about stormwater until we get these heavy downpours like we've had this year.
Yes, so yes, if you think back to prior to 2002 when we passed the park stormwater, I mean, something that probably everyone remembers is downtown flooding before we were able to do the Willow Branch project. But we had a list of projects that totaled $21 million, and we've completed those. We still have some projects to complete. When it's all said and done, we're going to bring in about $44.5 million, and we're projecting right now, when all of the stormwater projects are done, that it will be about $43.3 million. So we believe that we will have a little bit of surplus to either roll if the voters would approve the tax again for more projects, or possibly do some more needed projects that we identify.
Yes, needs continue to grow. And we've been showing some pictures on the screen, kind of before and after some of these. And sometimes they're just something as simple as what we call the drainage ditch,
Yes.
becoming a more, improving those types of things. We also have some pictures of parks, and a lot of people, we have a lot of neighborhood parks, and taxes help people, those parks down the street that their kids play in.
I think we have some outstanding parks. We've been able to do things at almost every park. We've built skate ramps. We've improved the what we used to call jungle gyms. I don't know what they call them now, but the children play on and so forth. And of course, the aquatic centers, we've made additions and improvements in the pools. And Joplin is blessed to have some great parks. They really are.
So when you look at some of these pictures, even things like the athletic complex was built through this special tax.
Yes.
And so the events that you're holding there today, the baseball tournaments, the different things that are going on, are being done thanks to having this facility.
Yes.
Absolutely. Leslie and I even played in a softball game when we opened that complex out there a few years ago, and we hate to admit that the local TV folks
they
beat us, I think, in the game. Yeah, but it's a great facility. People, you go out by there, and there's people there either playing softball or baseball or tennis or soccer all the time. And it's just great. And
of course, we'll continue to go through the slides and we'll talk specifics, but capital improvements, people don't think about that, but we're looking at road type projects. Yes. But an old picture of Connecticut, the railroad crossing.
Yes.
And that was not only a beautification, but a safety feature for many people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was a project that you involved a lot of coordination even with the railroad company to get this done.
Yes.
And tie this in. So you look at the before and after and you sometimes forget how narrow the road was and tight. Other intersections, here we have Connecticut and Murphy, just helping traffic flow, safety as well.
Yes.
And tying through the area, so the areas that are coming along.
With the number of folks we have coming into our city every day, as Leslie mentioned, we have a lot of folks on our streets, and so when we can widen them and improve them and move traffic along and get people to their destinations, it keeps them happy, and it makes things work smoother.
And this is an ongoing project right now, the Schifferdecker Bridge area.
Yes.
And so that show the before, now the construction that's currently underway in that part of town. Another map which people probably can't see close, but you can see there's throughout the area, throughout the community, people have projects planned and working together. And then public safety. Talked about the police and the fire, but it's not just hiring more officers, right?
Right. It was it's actually building 2 additional fire stations. We have completed one of those, and that's Fire Station 6. And then we will build another one on the east side of town. And then we also built the Public Safety Training Center, which is helping us train our fire and police, and it's an outstanding facility.
And that's one up by the airport along the highway.
Yeah, it actually has a fire tower and has a driving range where they can learn. We used to have to send our people to another city to get that information, and now we have it here, and we can actually do a train for other cities.
Right in town, they can come in and use that. So, and the graphic, you can't really, this one's hard to see, but also streetlights are part of that project.
Yes.
So putting in more lighting throughout the community and tying that together. And then we'll talk about this in a little bit as far as the timelines, but you mentioned the fact that they do have sunsets, that you have a 10-year plan, that you have a goal within those 10 years to accomplish those, piecing them together. Tell me a little bit about the phases. You mentioned there's different projects. I've read that you have a phase 1, a phase 2, that you have timetables for these.
Right. So we come out with a list of projects that we're going to do, and depending on those projects, sometimes they have phases. Like Willow Branch, I think it had 4 phases. It was a very large project that we needed to break down based on the areas that were improved, so that's the way that we have set these up, so that we can collect the money and then construct the projects.
Right. So it's kind of you're paying as you go along, right? You have to have the money in house to build and do things and tie that together. Well, Mayor, do you get people who may say, "Well, I thought when we voted on this, we were going to get XYZ or a certain road or something," and that's just still to come in that 10-year plan?
Yes, it takes a while to accomplish those things. One of the biggest complaints I get today is that people say, "Are you trying to drive us crazy with all these cones all over everywhere?" Well, we're just trying to do what we said we were going to do with it, and there's a certain season that you can do a lot of construction, and so our folks are just trying to do the best they can, and obviously hiring other folks, and then our staff as well, working to try to fulfill that line of projects that we said we're going to try to do.
So is that something that you on council and the council members look at as far as kind of a checklist? Okay, we had these things promised. Where are we at on that list?
Yes, actually we get a report every 30 days, maybe even more if we want it, from staff that tells us what projects we're on, what stage we're in that progress. Or sometimes you have to be in a stage where you buy property. Sometimes you have to be in a stage where you get approval to get to infringe upon other people's property and stuff. And then there's times for construction, and there's time for completion. Of course, when you build a street, not only you have to have curbs and gutterings and everything else, but then you have to stripe them and all that. So yes, we get a report pretty regularly about where we are, and that way when our citizens ask us, we can have something to share with them.
Well, as I mentioned, the staff then at the city works closely together. I mean, you got a feel for how the funds are coming in, but then the people who are coordinating these projects. Right?
Yes, and when we made this presentation, actually, several departments of the involved departments were there to talk about their projects. And when we meet with the oversight committee, it's all of the departments that are involved with these taxes and these projects are there to present their part of it. And I will say one reason that we went ahead and presented this to council when we did is, I mentioned that the voters approved the first round of the park stormwater and the capital improvement, and then they approved the second round. We have now finished all of the projects on phase 1 of the park stormwater sales tax, and we've completed all of the projects on capital improvement phase 1 except for one project which we think will be completed by next year. And then we're well underway on the phase 2 of both of those taxes, and so it seemed like a good time to present it to both the public and the council as to our progress.
Right. So in reality, you're looking at this 10-year time frame. You want to make sure that UND will accomplish some of these projects within that time frame.
You bet.
Working that together. So communication and tying those in must have been, accomplished to say you've completed some of these projects.
Yes. It seems sometimes, like the mayor said, there are several steps to doing big projects like this, and sometimes it seems like it takes a long time. And so I think that it felt good for staff to be able to stand up and say, we've completely finished phase 1 of the tax and finished all of the projects that we promised.
Now, for people who have been around the community a long time, you mentioned 20 years ago it looked different. You're getting comments from people that, that intersection does work out pretty well. I don't have to wait so long at the light, or, I like those new parks.
Yes, we really do. Certainly, we've gotten a lot more compliments than we've got any complaints about it. But, the only complaints have been the fact that we're interrupting their travel for a little while they're doing it. But basically, yeah, there's people have been very appreciative. They can see the change that have been made, and I think that's why when we needed to go back and extend the tax again, they were there. They were willing to do that because they see and appreciate the steps that are taking. And one of the things that blesses me, Judy, is the fact that the dedicated people we have, everyone of our parks director and our public works director, and those that are the folks that are out where the rubber meets the road type of thing. It's not just a job to them. They're passionate about what they do, and that makes the jobs better. And what thrills me is when they come and say, we've been able to do this, we've been able to do that, and we found ways to save money here and make our money go further, and that's really a blessing.
Well, that must be a challenge. And when you come in with a proposal, you kind of have to estimate what's going to cost. In 10 years, prices can change.
We do. So we estimate how much money the sales tax will generate over the next 10 years, which is difficult. We also have to estimate what those projects will cost to do, and you have to build in some inflation depending on when those projects are going to happen. But I will say that when we made this presentation, we were able to show council that we have been able to use our taxpayers' dollars to leverage grants from the federal government and make our dollars go further. And so we've actually been able to add projects to the list rather than not complete projects. We've added to the list and been able to complete additional projects.
So outside agencies are seeing the investment that the city is making and saying, okay, we'll help you out with certain areas.
Yes.
And tying that together. So do you communicate a lot with state and federal levels as well, saying, we've got this need and we're willing to pitch in, can you help us?
Yes.
And tying that together. So when people think about items such as stormwater and capital improvement, obviously you're driving on the streets, your water has to run somewhere after it rains, and those types of things that they're looking at. But a lot of times you don't think about it until you have those problems. When somebody calls and says, that road's not looking too good.
Yes. Well, you remember Leslie and I were just talking before we came in. Stormwater was a big problem for us in the downtown area and in our whole city. And step by step we've been working on that. I can remember when 7th and Illinois, every time there was a rain, that was closed. And 7th Street, about 7th and Pearl, was always flooded. And you went over to 4th and Murphy Boulevard. We had a tire dealership there that every time we had a rain, that place flooded. It was up into his business. Well, we don't ever see any flooding there now.
So do you feel that this, like the downtown, has helped the economic development? People are willing to invest in downtown knowing their business may not be flooded?
Yeah, I really do, and we were able to, in the past, been able to do some improvements down there. Just things as simple, doesn't fall under the parks and safety sales tax, but the flowers that are downtown, that we've added. We have more comments on that than anything else, just little things like that. And again, I think some of those things, anytime you can do a little bit more than what you were stepping out to do, people notice. And there's no doubt in my mind that people have noticed that there's not flooding in those areas.
Right, the people who grew up and knew that area would flood, they know it's a lot better now, and tying that together. Well, what are some examples of projects still to come in some of these areas?
Yeah, so we still have some really exciting road projects coming. The stretch of road on 32nd Street from Schiffer-Decker to Central City, that's one of our big projects still to come. We're getting ready to expand 44th Street from Range Line to Connecticut. So there are a lot of big still street projects to come. The majority of the parks projects have been completed. We still have some work to do in some neighborhood parks, but the major projects in parks are complete. Stormwater, we still have a lot of the major projects on stormwater are done, and now we're concentrating more on the minor system improvements, more of the neighborhood.
The area neighborhoods that have low levels and things like that?
Yes, and so those are some things that our citizens can be watching for.
Great. So roads being something that obviously people notice because of the orange cones.
Well, certainly, yes, absolutely.
But it sounds, you have a lot of work on the south side, it sounds like, but there's other parts of town. I know you have a north side project as well down the road with Zora, for instance.
Yes.
Still to come. So
there's a lot of folks don't realize that you have to plan ahead for things like water drainage and that type of thing. And in the past, we didn't have regulations and things in place to take care of that. And so we do have some neighborhoods where when it rains, it creates a problem. And those are things that our staff are working diligently on to see that we don't have that in the future. We have rules and regulations for subdivisions and things now that get that water off and out. Of course, the more building you have going on, the more asphalt and stuff, the more water doesn't soak, it wants to run, and so we have to provide for ways to get it out of the.
So new developments are doing things that we haven't seen in the past, like retention ponds and ways to control that overflow of the water, and tying things together, and tying that together. Public safety-wise, items that are still to come in there?
Yeah, and the public safety sales tax is a little bit different in the fact that it does not have a sunset. We hired 30 police officers, and we've hired 22 firefighters so far. And so that tax, because we're hiring people, needed to go on forever.
Right.
But almost all of the capital projects under that tax are complete except that additional East Side Fire Station. We have purchased the property, so we're just right now waiting to build that station and then staff that station. And then we're still working on streetlights, but essentially that tax you can boil it down now to just operations and the ongoing staffing with that tax.
So it sounds like it would help the police and fire departments knowing that they have a consistent funding source to help them as they need to grow to help the
absolutely, yes. Obviously, we're excited about any time, we've got a lot of things coming and happening in our city right now, and we need to have the police and fire in place to be able to take care of all that. And obviously, we might even want to expand our boundaries a little bit if we can in certain areas, and so we have to be prepared for that.
You have to have the people to cover those areas and tie that together. So the ones that are going to sunset, what kind of timetable are we looking at for those? I know you mentioned stormwater has a sunset coming up.
Yep, park stormwater will be next. It will sunset on March 31st of 2022. So we will, as a staff, probably start working on that, the needs assessment in 2020. And then, for the next year or so after that, then that's when the Citizens Committee will begin their work, and will begin the effort to renew that tax. on the capital improvement sales tax, we're about midway through it. It will expire in 2025.
Okay, so a few more years on that one.
Yes, so we will probably start the needs assessment for it in late 2022, early 2023.
And for some people, they think, well, that's a long way down the road, but next year's 2020, so you're going to be working on these projects.
It comes just like that. It really does.
So right now, looking at the needs, next year they're going to lead to 2022, the voters having a the decision once again how they want to support this.
It does, and it just amazes me. Leslie was talking about the fact that the estimation they do and to plan for the projects, and it's amazing how staff almost every time they come with us a project, it's under their estimations, and so they work hard to do that, and they know what they're doing, and so it makes projects and things move smoothly and work ahead. And I think one thing about the taxes when we renew them, people, when they see results of things that are happening, it's not anything that's increasing their tax, it's just continuing it for a little while longer to try to take us to another level that we want to be, and so it's usually a little easier to swallow and be able to handle, because we all pay the taxes, so
go shopping, you spend the money, right? And I know some of your projects will see signs on the side of the road, completed thanks to such and such a tax. I guess reminding people is a part of the process, and letting people seeing what they have to say. Is there a way for citizens to see these lists or these projects through the website or information the city has, if they're curious?
Sure, they can go to our website and look at this information.
So kind of, in addition to the council having a checklist, John Q. Public can say, well, what are we working on?
Yeah. Our staff does very well of anything we have going, or anything we have done. You can go to the website and pull it up, and you can even go on there to figure out what the mayor's supposed to be doing or what the county.
A lot of information.
A lot of information there.
Well, I know we're talking about the citizens' reactions. I know, Mayor, you deal with a lot of people who come into the community and visit and so forth. What kind of reaction do you get from people visiting Joplin who see these changes?
Seriously, it's all been very good. I think, like you mentioned a little while ago about people investing more in the downtown area, and I think you see that on Range Line as well in different areas. I think they see that there's a community that's interested in having things ready for not only to meet our needs now but future needs, and so that attracts them and their interest. People want to make money. They want to invest in areas where people have good schools and good parks and things of that nature. We have good schools, we have great parks, and I think that that's one of the things they look at when they come to try to decide which city. Right now we have folks considering our industrial park out here, and we're one of two major places that they're looking at, and these things all will make a play in where they decide they're going to invest $40 or $50 million. We'd love to have it be right here.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you for taking time today to visit and share some information with the viewers, and keep updated on what's happening in the Joplin area. So,
Judy, we certainly owe a great thank you to you and to MSSU. You all have been a blessing to us for a number of years, not only carrying our program, but helping us in so many ways. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.